Hello.
Hi.
And welcome to StoryWorld Explorers, where we're exploring the story world of Ultraman.
So you guys might have heard some stuff about Ultraman. It's popping off on Netflix. So we got to speak to Jeff Gomez, who is working with the parent company in Japan to bring Ultraman here to the United States and start to build a following. And boy, oh boy, did we talk about some fantastic stuff and fantastic resources and the importance of building an audience.
Right. It's a little different than our usual podcast, partially because we don't need to suggest content for Jeff. Jeff
knows what he's doing.
Jeff has all the ideas he needs. But yeah, it was very, it's just, it's a good way to show that this is actually, dollars go behind this kind of thing. This is the new way of thinking about stories in general.
Right. And we were even talking about the Metaverse and about how Ultraman, who's been around for 55 years, has 3 different generations or iterations of Ultraman and 16 Ultramen altogether. And so how to blend the past nostalgia with these new iterations and making them a part of a larger metaverse, much like we see with Marvel. So it's a fantastic conversation. Once again, full of so much great information. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can it's coming right up. Or if you want to listen to it, it's on all audio platforms.
There will be pictures on the YouTube version, though.
That's right. So just some incentive to watch. Enjoy the show.
Enjoy.
So welcome back to StoryWorld Explorers. Today we have quite the treat for you. We are talking about Ultraman, the story world of Ultraman, with none other than the great Jeff Gomez. Jeff, we'll just dive right into it. We know your time is precious, so let's dive into the story world of Ultraman. Give us some details.
Sure. Well, we've talked before about transmedia storytelling and about the rising proliferation of narrative universes, story worlds, and one of my favorites has been Ultraman from when I was a little kid. Ultraman is basically the Japanese Superman. He's tremendously iconic, born in the 1960s, not terribly long after the Second World War. Ultraman represented the highest aspirations of the Japanese people. He was this towering silver giant, a being that was highly futuristic, a character that is associated with modern technology. And Ultraman fights Kaiju, giant monsters. These monsters actually, if you look closely, tend to represent some of humanity's failings. They emerge in response to things like pollution, the abuse of weaponry, the abuse of technology, and so forth. The darker aspects of humanity and human emotion are incarnated in these things, and Ultraman does battle with them. This franchise has lasted for 55 years in Japan and has been tremendously successful there, generating over $100 million a year even to this day. Ultraman incarnates himself over and over again in these various series on television, but also in theatrical features, animation, just everything you can imagine. Japanese media mix is involved in this, right? So the challenge was, well, here we have this character who was kind of a proto character who spawned characters that Americans know far better, like the Power Rangers, Pacific Rim, Transformers, things like that. There was a lawsuit that prevented Ultraman from being exported from Japan for many years. That lawsuit was resolved in the favor of Tsuburaya Productions, the owners of Ultraman. And they came to me and said, what can we do to bring Ultraman back on a global platform and leverage some of these transmedia techniques of yours? And of course, we've talked, guys, about things like deriving brand essence, finding out what the unique features of Ultraman are, and conveying that to the audience, because Ultraman is an evergreen property in Japan. there's no reason why it ought not to be everywhere in the world. I think we touched on that sort of thing and developed a relationship with Subaraya that, guys, I am thrilled to tell you is one of the most unique that Starlight Runner has ever developed with a partner and client, because they're allowing us to do the exact things that we have always recommended to the big studios to do, but that the big studios have been very hesitant at doing.
Right. Right, absolutely. There's a lot to kind of talk about there. I mean, one of the great things, and we told Jeff this during our pre-conversation, that he's mowing down trees in front of us, that he's making this path, and he's out there and he's haggling and he's making sure that people understand the importance of transmedia and the benefits of it. There's with Ultraman being so vast, the history being so deep, even just going onto the website Ultraman Galaxy, where you have all this history and we can go and see what the timelines are, it's overwhelming for us who were very, very big Power Ranger fans, by the way, and saw a lot of Power Rangers in even the YouTube series Ultraman Z that just was in 2020. I mean, when Ultraman goes ahead and punches the gigantic rhinoceros-looking thing in the face, and then that horn wiggles, I'm like, that's Power Rangers. It's 100% Power Rangers. But there's so much there. It's very hard for any consumer that's not familiar with the franchise to kind of dive in. And there's a lot of different ways, as with transmedia, that allows us to dive in. The partnership with Marvel Comics to do the Rise of Ultraman is one way to get people interested in even just reading an article on that. Finding the nostalgia pieces for those, but introducing him to the world.
And I think that's, you don't want to just rely on nostalgia. While Frank found that funny, someone who's younger today sees that and thinks that's kind of cheesy,
Right.
Whereas that opens our heart. Oh, it's Power Rangers with the floppy sword. It's the same thing, the sparks fly.
Right.
So it's like you need to establish a new audience in a new way, which I was also watching the Netflix one, which is a lot more serious and gory in its interpretation, which I think is a reflection of where anime and all these new properties are going anyway.
Well, even just trying to introduce it to new audiences, I think it was a great stepping stone for that. But we just threw a lot of stuff there, so we kind of ricocheted all back and forth. But that idea of trying to get these, some sort of a mix between the past, the nostalgia, and then the bringing forward this new iteration of Ultraman, and how those things kind of mix in a somewhat metaverse that Ultra Galaxy Fight is kind of playing around with, where we have a whole bunch of Ultraman from the past and now from the future, and the young ones, and they're all coming together to solve these problems. I mean, that's just in general, that's a lot of work to do. But you're balancing the nostalgia, the people that grew up with this, and then also trying to match expectations of the modern times of what we're looking for in a series to make it really pop here in America.
So let's talk about the strategy, because you're right, it can be quite overwhelming. To the Western eye, for example, these characters look very similar to one another, and can be hard to tell apart, as opposed to the more distinct silhouettes of the Marvel or DC superhero characters. Right. So, each of these series tended to take place within their own kind of pocket universe. And so effectively, it's as if the franchise has rebooted itself dozens and dozens of times. Well, the first thing that we did was adhere to our own principles of transmedia storytelling, which is to give various aspects of the potential audience their access points. Right? We determined that there were about 60,000 people in the United States who knew Ultraman fairly well, for example. That's the core fan base. and I knew that we needed to treat those people with respect, and could not ignore them. I wanted them to be apostles for Ultraman. So the key there was to make sure that anything we do with the character, they're used to the reboots. What they don't like is for the character, the essence of the character to be ignored. So the Marvel comic had to be indicative of those core essentials. It could be a modernization, it can be the Marvel perspective, but still Ultraman had to be Ultraman, and had to observe the kind of rules that the Ultraman universe tended to observe. With that and some of the other things that we did with the fan base, that proved to them that I was a fan, as I am the representative these days, it seems, of Ultraman in the West, and that the property was being taken seriously. From there, it's just a matter of finding different platforms to engage different audiences. The anime audience with Anime Ultraman on Netflix, for example, and bring them in, right? The nostalgia audience, the older people my age, get the Mego doll and some of that component. But the magic, and I think the real reason for us to talk, guys, is how new some of the approaches that we're taking really are, and that has to do with turning those core fans into apostles, turning them into people who will defend and protect our intellectual property, who want Ultraman to become huge again, to want Ultraman to become a character as well known as Master Chief or some of the Marvel characters, Harry Potter, to be a global icon. When you have them on your side, instead of them wanting to kind of keep the property for themselves and become resentful when it becomes popular, that's really a trick to pull off. And we're using some really fascinating methods to forward that.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. And I love what you said, the apostle stuff. I mean, really, and anybody that we've spoken to throughout this podcast, just so happened to talk to them in a festival or whatever. I mean, though you are literally trying, or even people that we're trying to get to understand that you can market in a transmedia way. Right. You have to find those core audience members. You have to find those people that I joke around with the StoryWorld we're working on that's going to go dressed up as a vampire killer or whatever to Comic-Con. You have to find those people. Right. And like you said, you have to take care of them, and you have to make them feel, and not even just feel, but you have to make them a part of the world. You have to make sure that their opinions are being taken seriously. Their likes and their dislikes. And obviously there are going to be times that there are people that, it's like, I'm sorry, that's not what this world is. We have to stay true to the story and everything. Yeah. But finding those people, like you said, that will defend it through the gates of hell. But it doesn't matter, right? We are going to spread the word of Ultraman. Yeah. So let's talk about some of those mechanisms that you're using, because that accessibility, and that is just a mind change that we have to start to get creatives to start to think about with any property that they're working on. Is the mind change of let's not just hope that we just get picked up by Netflix and then we start to build our audience after that. We have to start now, get those people that will protest in front of the White House, those people that just cannot wait. They're just like, no, this has to happen. Right. This has to happen. I'm done waiting.
And I think a lot of times, even when talking to a creator, it's always, I'll forget about the audience, they don't matter. But you know what, I think what people tend to think, it's like what will sell is not the proper way to. It's like, who is this for is a different question. Because when you're asking what will sell, you're asking what are the producers looking for. The producers don't know what they're looking for. They don't know shit about what they're looking for. But understand that your audience is very important, because those are the people that are going to turn the heads of those producers. Be like, there's something here.
Right. I'm going to be able to make my money back.
Right. So it's like, Yeah, so I think it's
Absolutely.
there's
So,
that difference.
to a degree, you can't blame the so-called storyteller, be they Disney or an author or something like that, for essentially leaning back. I am, after all, the master. You are my audience. I will give you what I feel I need to say, and you will shut up.
Right.
and listen, because we're the experts, right? So that's worked for 150 years of mass communication, right? It's only fairly recently that the audience gets to talk back at you,
Right.
with more than their dollars at the box office or
Right.
their ratings on TV. And so things have changed, and a lot of companies are uncomfortable with that change. Look how many companies are grappling with their audience, are having spats with their audience, and are not allowing their audience to create user-generated content based on their intellectual property or things like that. They want that gap, so that they can fiercely protect their intellectual property. But any visit to Comic-Con, or I was just at Anime New York City, and that all they want is to be a part of your world. All they want is to dress up and write stories and create breakdown videos of your content, and so that mentality needs to shift. One of the things that we're doing is we're remembering, and this is so important, guys. We're remembering what it used to be like to truly love something, right? That's the position where I start as a transmedia storyteller, but also as a producer, creator of story worlds, right? What was it like to be that kid? What was it like to be somebody who loves something so much that they're going to spend hundreds of dollars to dress up like that character and go out in public, or to spend hours and hours on message boards, affiliating with people, building relationships with friends who like the same thing that you do? What was that like? So one of the first things that I did was I didn't even announce that I was Mr. Ultraman. I just started participating in fan forums and Facebook pages and so forth that were devoted to Ultraman and Japanese pop culture. Just started talking to them, and little by little, over the course of months, did they start to realize that this Jeff Gomez is the Jeff Gomez that is responsible for Ultraman Connection and for bringing Ultraman across all these different media platforms, a producer of Ultraman. Once that happened, guys, there was truly respect. Sometimes there were complaints about some product or other, or some methodology that was being used to communicate Ultraman. But more often than not, they were like, "Wow, are you sure you have time to be talking to us?" That kind of thing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had on our podcast recently somebody that his entire story is based around father and daughter relationships, and that was like, we know of a nonprofit that does stuff with fathers that are like, it's like a support group for fathers. I'm like, you have to talk to these people, right? Though that's your audience right there. And it's amazing that we forget about how much access we have to the people that we're trying to connect with. So you going on, like, Jeff Gomez just is going to go on a community board, and he's going to go and talk to people about Ultraman and see where people are at. What are they looking for? Everything that a fan would do that wanted to get more deep into a world.
It's like the ultimate focus group, partially because you don't have to give them a tote bag at the end of it. They want to talk about it.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's so silly to think that there are people out there that aren't willing to do that and aren't willing to take that step, but to take that and then to, once again, you could find those a few of the core audience members. Maybe you start with one. You find the one person that like is really speaking about it, and they know other people, and that's how this whole relationship game works. That's how you build an audience is through that technique of going out and talking to people.
Right. And and especially when something with existing IP, you have to give credit to the people that made it famous in the first place. It's like
100%.
the people that that's the reason why it exists, is because of these people. 50 years of fans is why it exists. So obviously you have to, if you're gonna change it or restart it, you have to come in as a friend, and then say, oh, okay, this is what they're all looking for. This is what that series was missing, and this is why this was so successful and this one wasn't. It's because of what they're talking about.
And we have to know what we're talking about. So the people who do, either myself or the people who represent a Starlight Runner or Ultraman, that are going into that fan base had better know their stuff, because if we're wrong too often, we're going to get zonked.
Yeah,
so
step talking about Zordon, Zordon, it's like, I love that episode where Zordon is like, well, what did you just say?
Oh, I'm sorry. No. So step 2, guys, is what are the patterns in what we're discerning? What do they like? What do they not like? And to focus on the aspirational and the optimistic. Everyone can complain about anything, but what they want, we found, across the board, everybody wanted the same thing, which was new content. They wanted to learn more about the universe. They wanted to learn whether there was a kind of unified field theory about the Ultraman universe. Are you guys thinking about this as deeply as we are? The answer had to be yes. Even if maybe occasionally it wasn't. It needs to be. And so when we started to create the website and started to think about these new forms of outreach to fans, we knew that we always needed to be able to communicate something that they didn't already know, but also something that was going to be canonical, something new to add to their yearning to collect more information about the thing that they love. Okay, so how do you do that? How do you do that when the next series isn't going to be for months and months, or the next Netflix season isn't going to be for 18 months, and so forth? The Netflix animated feature that's going to be made of Ultraman, which is a huge win for us, because that's going to be animated by Lucasfilm Animation, and it's going to be a big kind of Japanese USA co-pro. That's years away. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, my idea was to create, and this is in tandem with a company that I've collaborated with called Elevate. Together we created Iceberg Theory, a virtual event company, a company that is there to cultivate fan bases and launch intellectual properties using a kind of software stack that we're calling the fan engine or the fangin. So this is a website that is capable of generating live streamed events. And we're working with Tokyo, with Tsuburaya Productions, to be able to run these events every month or two that actually will contain amazing new content for Ultraman fans. They don't have to wait anymore. They're going to get to be able to touch the canon every couple of months in a new and authentic way. And we're so excited about this. It started this past June. and we've done 4 of them already.
Yeah. We've got to dive more back into Iceberg Theory, but that whole idea of being able to go back, and as you said, be able to go back into the story world and find out new things in between these projects that take a long time.
Right.
And usually when we're talking to people on this podcast, they're trying to get to that first one, the big piece of content, right?
That series, that movie they want to get made, and so it's very important to have content that can support that and get you to that goal.
Right, and then to keep the audience paying attention to you, right? And to make sure that they know that you're still working on stuff and that there's more great stuff to come. And look, here's this this interactive live event, which we have to dive into because, it was such a huge audience builder during a time when there was a stall in content. There wasn't really an accessibility. And transmedia allows you to do a lot of cool stuff because it's any type of media, so you can figure it out. But yeah, so that way that you can constantly interact.
Let me name some names. Let me name some names right now. Avatar. Starlight Runner worked on Avatar with Lightstorm, James Cameron's company, and 20th Century Fox under Tom Rothman. We saw that this was going to be big. We knew it in our bones as the picture was being made. So we went to the studio and said, where is the campaign? How are you going to maintain this story world in between movies, which would turn out to be quite a while, as you know.
Right.
And they looked at us like we were crazy. They were like, well, there's going to be toys and there's going to be a video game. And we said, yes, but the video game's no good. And you're not letting us fix it. So that will die, leaving hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. What are you going to do? And the answer obviously was very little. There's Pandora, the world of Avatar at the Disney parks, and there was a Cirque du Soleil Avatar inspired project, Toruk, but that was it. And that franchise obviously suffered and essentially has to start from scratch with the next picture. Right.
I'm trying to think about when that even came out. It was like
2009,
2008 or 2009, around then.
But
I mean, you essentially shoot yourself in the foot if you don't have some sort of a mechanism in place to keep people. Once again, we always say that you have to earn attention. You can't buy attention. You can't just expect attention. You have to earn it. So by earning it, from a media standpoint, you got to be putting stuff out there for people to interact with.
Especially with something that was so it's a world. It's quite literally a world, and you can explore various aspects of that world, and
through a good video game, I guess.
Right, through a good video game, you could do a lot of stuff.
Right.
Let's use a second example again from personal experience. I was called to the United Kingdom to speak with J.K. Rowling. The Pottermore website was about to be launched. They knew right away that it was troubled, and so we studied Pottermore and went there to sit down with her and her representation and said, listen, we'd love to help you. The universe that you've created is vast and sprawling, and you're between books, and it's going to be a couple of years before the next book. So what are we going to do? And what is Pottermore really for? Well, it's a place for fans to get together because we want to sell them Harry Potter books in new and different formats. And I said, well, that's great, but they're going to all visit there, spend 10 or 15 minutes there and leave. And they're not coming back because you're not giving them any more canonical content. What's the program? What's the arc for doing that? And how can the fans feel that they're a part of it? Right. And the answer bluntly was the fans are not a part of it. They cannot be a part of it. They cannot submit their drawings or their poems or their stories or anything, not to this site. No way, not going to happen. And I go, well, okay, so are we going to get short stories set in the universe? No, there'll be little tidbits every now and then, and every tidbit that we drop, that's going to be a headline, a global headline, and that's no good, guys. That's and I said it's not going to work, and she said, well, then you may leave. She kicked me out.
Oh man.
So that's a website that was inert, effectively, and Pottermore is just a website now. So what can we do at Iceberg Theory that's different from that, and that is to embrace the fans and make them feel as if they can touch the canon, that certainly they're influencing the canon, and that the canon is responding to them.
Right. Yeah, so let's dive in a little bit more into how that whole system works. And this is all like absolutely fantastic, mostly because one of the things that we do often is we talk to these creatives, and the most difficult thing is kind of getting all this stuff set up. I kind of gave you a little in our pre-conversation about what we're working on, and it's a lot of legwork to kind of put something together to be able to capture the information and to be able to engage with the conversations or make some place that people can go and have conversations. And so if Iceberg Theory can help with any of that to get some start, not even a startup, it's probably a whole bunch of people that have been working on a script for 10 years and haven't been able to get traction on it. That can actually get their hands down and start to have these interactions, have these conversations, start to build up these apostles, so to speak. That would be fantastic. So how about we dive into a little bit more of that, about how the system works?
That's wonderful. And guys, this won't remain proprietary to our company and to Ultraman. The structure that we're building, this software stack, is designed to be usable for any intellectual property, and comparatively speaking, it's not expensive. And these shows that we're doing are not tremendously expensive. They're making money because there's a merch store, and there are various ways. There'll be various models to generate money in the interim, but their primary import is to launch story worlds and to make those story worlds highly engaging. So here's the rundown. What we're able to do is first of all generate a fan-oriented website, not a website that's designed to put out press releases, but a website that is being written by highly knowledgeable people about the thing that all of these fans love. The people writing the content love the stuff too, and are able to harken back to various aspects of the franchise, while also making sure that that it's scrutable. that what we're talking about, we're placing in some kind of context, so that someone new comes to it and isn't completely lost. Mm-hmm. It's still a little puzzling at times, I have to tell you, but we work on that, and then we start to tease out these events. In this day and age, live streaming is simple. It's easy to pull off. It's something you can set up in a matter of a few weeks and still have something that is presentable. You can stream video and so forth. So our question to Subaraya Productions is, what's new? What can we talk about? What's going on? And at first they were leery about all this, and they said, well, nothing. We're not going to talk about it. And I said, give me something. Come on. Mm-hmm. Even a minor situation. This character, Sevenger, is a giant robot. He's so popular. Can't I build an event around that character? All right, sure. Here you go. And here's a little something new some footage that we have of Sevinger. You can run that. And suddenly we had hundreds of fans for the very first event that we did. Right. And we're able to create a merch store with some Sevinger stuff on it, and the fans love that stuff, and we're buying the T-shirts and the toys and so forth, right? So that starts to evolve. On top of all of this, guys, video game engines, Unreal, Unity, and things like that, they can allow you to do some amazing things. Like it's shocking how quick and easy it is to use these tools. For example, to create intro videos. So we create animated introductions to each one of these live events, and the secret is that in those animated introductions, a little piece of canonical content hinting at the future of the franchise, we fold it in there. It could be somebody's voice over a radio. It could be the glimpse of a brand new character that you're seeing for the very first time in this animated intro video, before the character hits YouTube or before the character hits the TV show.
Yeah.
And at first, the audience doesn't even realize that that's what's happening, but retroactively, they start to talk with each other. They see the character on the show and go, "Hey, I glimpsed that character in the intro video to Ultraman Connection Live." And they start talking to each other about it. So we move from a couple of hundred fans to 17,000 fans. Right. Each of them is paying a few bucks to get into the live event. Each of them, a lot of them are purchasing merchandise on their way out. And suddenly we have something that it's at least paying for itself, that is helping to grow the fan base.
Right. And even just kind of like the hint of like, hey, you in the first one, you didn't know it was going to happen. Then all of a sudden the second one goes and you're like, oh, now we got 17,000 people here, because they're like, wait a minute, this isn't just some money grab, right? This isn't just some like, oh, it's going to be whatever. No, we're getting information from this. And there's going to be, the merchandise part of it. I mean, these are all just revenue streams too that can be really utilized by any type of a story world, so long as we could start to get people to go into it. So finding those people that are nuts about it and then getting excited to sell merchandise, rather than just putting up a store on your website and be like, why is nobody buying my t-shirt with my character on it? It's like, well, really, like what are we getting out of that, right? If it's the same old thing, we're like, oh, we're still working on stuff and there's no advancement to the world, there's no advancement to new introduction to new things or new stories, there's not going to be that drive, that need to see it. I can come back later. I can go ahead and purchase this t-shirt later, rather than just being like so hyped up because I just saw this amazing event and now I have access to it. And even just the idea that the merchandise is tied into it on the platform is huge too. I mean, we live in an age now that, the 2 clicks is too many. We need to be, everything's got to be right in front of us. We got to be able to do it, and we can make those decisions faster. And essentially taking away that whole, like, do I really need this t-shirt? Like, no, it's right there. Come on, let's just go ahead and buy it now.
Here's an example that might be helpful to your audience with regard to what we're talking about. My favorite characters in fiction are those dudes who are ushering you into the world. They might toss a few rules at the beginning. They're already in that world. They know that world, and they can kind of guide you, but it's just dangerous enough for you to kind of really be experiencing it for yourself and have to kind of catch on along the way. I love the original Willy Wonka, right? In Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Gandalf, right? Or Doctor Who in the prime of Doctor Who. You're jumping aboard, and you'd better learn about it along the way. That's what. Do you see the pattern with regard to what I'm doing? Suddenly, I show up on people's message boards. I don't make any announcement. It's happened. We're talking about it. There's no grandiosity about it. here we are. Come on board, if you like.
Right.
Same with the hiding of Easter eggs in these intro videos, right? And most recently, at some point during the live chat, which was going on simultaneous to what the fans were watching, which was the stars of the original Ultraman Dyna and Ultraman Gaia TV shows, two of the all-time favorites. Suddenly we said, hey guys, you want to ask them a question directly in the middle of this thing? And people are like, what? I can talk to my heroes, I can talk to these people without having to pay extra. Some of these convention situations are, pay us $50 and you can spend 30 seconds with your favorite star, and stuff like that. No, here you go, just talk to them, just ask them questions. And suddenly we were bombarded with questions from the fans, and we spent extra time having the celebrities respond live from Japan.
Wow.
And another thing was the floor shows. In Japan, instead of ice capades or the circus, your favorite TV show superheroes go on stage and kick monster ass. These elaborate choreographed shows with light shows, and they're shooting laser beams at each other and so forth. It's huge fun. We got Tsuburaya to do that in each episode. And we said, should we let fans know that this is happening? This is the most sought after aspect of the franchise because it's not going on here in the States or elsewhere in the world. The Japanese said, no, you don't have to. Let it be a surprise, And we rarely ever even mention the floor show, which is the big highlight of each show, because that's just for the fans, and the fans know it. They feel it, that something special, there's a treat going to be there for them at the end of the show that's going to be awesome. And we're going to show some, I hope you'll allow us to show some photos during this
absolutely.
It's to me, it's like a dream come true to be able to be involved producing shows that have all the Ultraman characters battling the Kaiju live in the studio. So you lock in love. In love. That fan is going to do whatever it takes to spread the word and support this endeavor. And for me, that's like lighting a campfire with a newspaper at the four corners. It's a spark that's going to turn into a huge blaze. One final step, guys, and it's the next one for us. And I just wanted to mention it because you guys are so often at the cutting edge of story. The notion of metaverse and what that means for us as storytellers. It's easy to misinterpret what a metaverse really can be. For me, it goes back to those old Japanese, TV shows where there were crossovers between two entirely different series, right? Or even Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where the Disney characters interacted with Warner Brothers characters, or Kingdom Hearts, where Disney characters and Japanese anime characters interacted. So my company, Starlight Runner, which is a part of Iceberg Theory, we're in the process of building that software stack, which will now is allowing for these virtual environments to happen. So eventually you're going to have an avatar that can walk into the Ultraman universe and move around in there. You can play games, you can interact socially with one another, and it will be acknowledged that the various different Ultraman continuums, the anime one you just talked about, the original Showa era Ultraman, all of those kind of coexist with the home world of the Ultras, M78 it's called. as the kind of constant, the anchor that connects all of these different dimensions and realities. Ultraman in and of itself is a kind of metaverse, right? The way that we're learning that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is also a metaverse, because there are these all variants and different realities and things like that. I think we're seeing the rise of metaverse because of the desire for our audience to essentially engage in their version or their favorite version of their favorite story world. Do you see what I'm saying? So that it allows for you to love Tolkien's novels, but also to visit Peter Jackson's movies, which have their differences. I can feel that my love for the original X-Men movies is intact because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is telling me that it has not negated those original X-Men movies or those original Spider-Man movies. They can live, they can coexist with the current canonical universe, and that makes me happy. Right. So that's why we're seeing this desire more on the part of the audience than even the big media companies, which are still grappling to understand this stuff. But it is happening, and we're moving in that direction ourselves.
And that's so exciting, because that was actually what I was going to say, was like, the connection between Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. How is that going to look? Because once again, you have these 16 Ultramen, but even the idea of, and this is still, very much in its infancy of having, we're hearing a lot about this stuff now. We're hearing about, you're going to be able to, be your character within this metaverse, and then be able to interact with a whole bunch of stories, play a whole bunch of different games and everything. And it's still very, well, outside of, like with Fortnite and everything, it's very much just still like what are we going to be able to do? Like, that's so crazy. It just kind of, and the connection between all of those generations, once again, like you said, it makes you happy, because it doesn't negate it. And I remember thinking, when the Spider-Man thing happened, and I was like, what? That's crazy. Oh, that's so great, because here we are, like Tobey Maguire is still our Spider-Man. And that was just because he was the first one that we saw. But just like you said, the original X-Men, I mean, that has a special place in your heart. And now we don't have to re-fall in love, right? Hugh Jackman doesn't have to, disappear as Wolverine. He was, or is continuing to be. But there can be new iterations, and thus this can live on perpetually, where there could be interactions between the two.
And there's that whole thing. It's like fans have been yearning for this type of thing. Is like for such a long time. It's like I mean, even when they recasted Spider-Man and said, oh, he's going to be in the, and then they're like, oh, well, what happened to all the great, we had so many good movies with them, and now all of a sudden you see Doc Ock from the old in the new, and it just
we could finally stop the arguments of no, this version was better, right? And I only referred back to Batman. It was like, no, Tim Burton's Batman was better than Christopher Nolan's. It's like, what? They're all. It would be a stretch. Hey, we were big fans.
No,
we were huge.
Whatever, man. But you were a Joel Schumacher fan.
Whatever. I love the idea of Batman in general. I was young. I loved Batman in general. He was amazing.
He refused to watch the Batman Begins and the Dark Knight.
But now we could start to get rid of that whole notion of defense as well, where it's like, well, you know what? Yes, it is a semi restart, but if we have it so that it all exists in the same world, this metaverse that we can travel back to, that all these realities are true. They're all true.
That's right.
Then we could start to, once again, you feel good about it.
On top of all of that, it validates headcanon. Here's my interpretation of what happened, which may have little to do with anything that was on the screen. But it allows me to say, you know what? It's a variant,
right?
And my characters in my fanfic or my YouTube, masterpiece, is just as legit as anything, or my interpretation. And you're seeing all these wonderful interpretation videos. Here's my theory about what's really going on here, or here's something, that will blow your mind about all these coincidences in these different interpretations of the story, and it validates that as well. I like that, guys, because it allows for groups like New Rock Stars to rise with their breakdown and Easter egg videos, because it's teaching us as fans to appreciate these narratives in different ways. It's teaching us to read them more closely and to be more analytic. And if it's one thing we as human beings all over the world need, it's a little more media literacy and a little more ability to discern and break down the story.
Yeah, and there you go. And it's a perfect wrap up at the end here. Jeff, thanks so much for being on with us. Everybody you saw the pictures on the screen because that already happened. You got to try to dive into the world of Ultraman. Like if you like Power Rangers and you want to go back, then watch some of the stuff on YouTube, and then of course the anime series and then comic books with Marvel. A lot of opportunities out there to get engaged with it.
Come to ultramanconnection.com and register, and you'll get an email the next time these virtual events take place.
Become a defense team member. I am one. And I love it because what? Yeah, right.
You did your homework.
Yeah, what do you mean I did my homework, Jeff? Look at this.
He has notes.
I got a whole bunch of notes. Yeah, absolutely. No, the defense team member, I love that. That's something that we're trying to integrate into our own story world. And once again, it allows for us as transmedia producers to understand what's going on and who is in our audience, but then it also allows that conduit of exclusive content. Like you could see the director's cut of New Generation of Heroes and the Absolute Conspiracy, which is that metaverse, the whole bunch of cool, all the Ultramen are coming together and trying to solve problems. And so excellent. Jeff, once again, thanks for being on with us. Always happy to talk to you. Looking forward to the next conversation. And like I said, we're going to keep you up to date with what we're doing.
Please do.
And looking forward to seeing the new iterations and the announcements that are coming soon, I'm sure.
Good deal.
Well, it's always refreshing to go ahead and talk to such a master of transmedia like Jeff. Fantastic. Shaman. Yeah. Fantastic information. Find your apostles. You could do this, and you could start right now. You don't need an IP as big as Ultraman. It could be as small as something that you're passionate about. That screenplay that you're writing, that you're hoping becomes a Netflix series. Build the audience now. It can only help you in the future. Yes, so for more great story worlds, you can go ahead and watch these on my left. And then, we even have the other Jeff Gomez podcast that he was on before talking about...
Not the other Jeff Gomez. It's the same guy.
Same guy.
Talking more in depth about...
transmedia and the collective journey.
So
you can find that. That's episode 11. I believe that's episode 11.
Episode 11.